Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier when I first started on this full-time journey, like account below PDT, not knowing anything really about consistent trading. You know, you have, and I think you touched on this on Twitter, like you can reach out to all the traders in the world about like what their strategies are and how they go about it and do it. But until you sit down and you try it, you don't know if it's going to fit your personality. You don't know if it's even something like you're comfortable doing. Like the whole goal is to have, you know, a community of traders where you can pick little pieces off of and then make that style your own. And you only can do that by doing it. Um, yeah, there is no simple recipe for finding that one successful strategy. But I'll tell you what, there's like after a few days of doing it and you can visually see that that strategy is working, that's where that confidence comes in. And then you just keep doing it and then you just prove to yourself that hey, this works. Like, you know, it's not enough to take a couple flag setups and say, oh, like I'm a flag trader. You know, you have to be able to like see hundreds, if not thousands, of different setups and realize like, you know, I know how to play this. What's the best way to play this, or do I even play it at all? And again, you hear the word screen time get thrown around a lot as like the best teacher, but is without a doubt, you know, 100% fact. Like without like being in front of the screens and just seeing how things move, you do get that sixth sense, that like more that intuition type feeling, um, which is something that like I think has also helped my trading. Because again, I've now been at this full time for 9 months, and I don't do anything all day other than sit in front of the screens and watch how charts move. And that right there is screen time.
Yeah. It's really frustrating for people to hear that too. Like I remember I used to get frustrated with Mikey Underdog because I would be like, why did you like this flag and not that flag? They looked the same to me. Like, why did this one work and this one didn't? And you played this one and it worked, and I played this one and it didn't. And you know, and he could just never articulate it. And it ultimately just comes down to like, I just have seen this a million times. I don't know, man. Like I can't even tell you what I see. It's just like I've seen this so many times that like it spoke to me. The chart said buy it, and I did.
It's
Yeah,
funny.
absolutely.
It's a funny thing, and you would think the more time you spend looking at things, the better you could get articulating.
Hmm.
Like yesterday, I bought spy puts because like at the very end of the day there was such a huge sell off, and then I got calls today because it like there wasn't a huge sell off. It was like holding the level higher, and I was just like, it just seems like, but I mean, I don't know if that's going to work out or not, but I have a lot more conviction being like, well, I've watched spy for 300 days now and I feel like I don't,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
And yeah, and sometimes like there will be certain trades that I take, which you know I'll get asked like, why did you take that trade? And like really deep down, if I had to give you the raw truth answer, it'd just be like, I feel like I could flip it to make a little bit of money here. It may look like the ugliest, choppiest chart in the world, but if I'm watching the tape and the level too, like if I feel like I could flip this, you know, for a few cents and make a couple $100, you know, that's just part of that, you know, sense and that intuition, you know, that you guys are also touching on.
By accessing this podcast, you acknowledge that the Penny Lane podcast makes no warranty, guarantee, or representation as to the accuracy or sufficiency of the information featured in this podcast. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. This podcast should not be considered professional or financial advice. Unless specifically stated otherwise, the Penny Lane Podcast does not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast, and information from this podcast should not be referenced in any way to imply such approval or endorsement. The third-party materials or content of any third-party site referenced in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions, standards, or policies of the Penny Lane Podcast. The Penny Lane Podcast assumes no responsibility or liability for the accuracy or completeness of the content contained in third-party materials or on third-party sites referenced in this podcast, or the compliance with applicable laws of such materials and/or links referenced herein.